Okay. All right, good evening. Tonight is our monthly meeting of the Board of Adjustment. While we are having to change how we operate, we are still committed to a transparent process and encouragement of public comment during our meetings. We will be accepting testimony from parties. If you wish to testify on any particular petition before us this evening using the Zoom platform, please use the raise hand feature. If you can raise your hand at any time and we will recognize you at the appropriate time for the presentation of evidence for each case. If you're in person, please hand to one of the staff members your speaker's card. Senior Planner Travis Newberry will be moderating the hybrid meeting tonight and will be asked to provide the names of those individuals that wish to speak. I'd like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Mr. Bob Morris, board member, Mr. Kevin Lux, board member, Mr. Jim Van Nest, board member, Mr. Daniel Sides, alternate member, he's on by Zoom, and myself, Arnie Sprunger, vice chair and acting chair for tonight's meeting. The Department of Planning staff present is Mr. Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, Mr. Travis Newberry, Senior Planner, and Ms. Robin Keefe, Planner. City Attorney John Young and Court Recorder Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I'd like to offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, February 16th, 2023, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's power and duties. Now, let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment Public Hearing Procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. The meeting is informal in its nature. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or his or her representative will be asked to state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance, and present such evidence and witness testimony that may evidence the practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship that warrant the variance. The board will only consider the unique character of the property to determine whether they warrant the granting of a variance. Board members may ask to clarify the facts, may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, I will then ask if there is anyone present or online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the requested variance. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then provide their evidence and oral testimony. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing prior to a call for the vote in order to bring in additional evidence or testimony. The board may also continue the proceedings. After the submission of testimony and evidence from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter, if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating in person or online. Once all witnesses have been heard, I will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions, and then the board will vote. At that time, the presentation of evidence relating to the petition is concluded and no further evidence will be permitted. The board may make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the variance for it to be approved. If the variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Okay. Mr. Newberry, are there any questions at this time? Hearing none, at this time, the meeting will proceed. So if we could please read the first request into the record, which will then be followed by a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the first item tonight is BA 1-23, Chris and Debbie Brown, 16315 Windcrest Falls Way, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005. A request an exception to the natural resource protection requirements for the purpose of constructing a new fence having a maximum height of 6 feet upon the property located at 16315 Windcrest Falls Way, located number 21U 230455, Windcrest subdivision, plat 5, lot 144, which would authorize the fence construction within the natural resource protection area while paralleling the 30-foot rear yard setback line. This request is contrary to the requirements of the Chapter 420.200 Natural Resource Protection Standards and Procedures of the Subdivision and Development Regulations of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code as applied to properties located in the R1A 22,000 square foot resident district, Chapter 415.120 R1A 22,000 square foot resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, and Plan Residential Development Overlay Ordinance 1177, which was approved by the Wildwood City Council on April 25th, 2005. This particular lot is located in Ward 2. Before Ms. Keep comes forward to the podium and provides the slide presentation, the department would also like to introduce into the official record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance, the file that has been developed and maintained by the City of Wildwood regarding this particular request, and its report with recommendation. And then finally, any other items that are offered as testimony tonight at this hearing. And again, Ms. Keefe will provide a side presentation for the benefit of all. And just as a sidebar, anyone in the audience, we have water and coffee, so help yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Ms. Keefe.
All right, I'm just going to give it a minute. Is it full screen? All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, our first case this evening has to do with a fence, a proposed fence in the natural resource protection area. This fence would be built along the rear yard setback line. The subject property is a just under half-acre parcel of ground in the Windcrest subdivision, which is in northeastern Wildwood, just east of Strucker and north of Clayton Road. This subdivision was approved in 2005, and it was approved as a planned residential development overlay, which consists of smaller lots surrounded by large tracts of common ground areas. It is located along the northern side of Windcrest Falls Way, which is a publicly maintained road, 40 feet in width. Occupying the lot is a single family dwelling that was built in 2005 when the subdivision was platted. And it is 4,833 square feet of total living area. The property in question is flat on its southern portion. Then it slopes downward to the northwestern corner of it. with 16 feet total relief. There is limited woodland in that western corner. But the majority of the lot has grassy turf area upon it. Okay, here you can see the site plan that was submitted by the petitioner. I'm just going to point out a few features. First, this green line is an existing retaining wall. Midway, well, I guess it's not really midway, but midway of the usable rear yard portion, and I apologize, I apparently excessively clicked there. Anyway, this retaining wall also is actually along the natural resource protection, final resource protection line. And then this little purple area is also part of that line. So that's what's significant in this case. The petitioner is proposing to construct a new fence past the natural resource final resource protection line. In red here, you can see where they are proposing to locate their fence. So it would be along this rear yard setback line, 30 feet. And then along the side here and connecting to the residence. There's an existing fence along this retaining wall, and then they would build a portion of it to connect to the residence, so it's a secure area. Okay. This is an image of the proposed fence. And here you can see the specifications of said fence. As part of their plan to construct this fence, the petitioners are proposing to also address an existing erosion and stormwater runoff issue on their property. And they plan to do this through landscaping methods. They're proposing to plant several trees, grasses, and shrubs, 2 species of which are considered plants of merit by the Missouri Botanical Garden, given their substantially beneficial qualities to the landscape. And then the other plants proposed are also Missouri native. So very nice landscaping. This is the front of the residence as we're looking north. This is looking east at Windcrest Falls Way. And this is looking west to give you a sense of the area. This is the residence across the street looking south. And here is the backyard area. And oops. And the idea of the petitioner is to line up with their neighbor's fence and enclose this entire grassy, the area that's covered by grassy turf today along this woodland line. This fence would be constructed up until this more natural portion where the grass ends, and then this would be reserved as natural resource, undisturbed area, I should say. This gives you a view of the retaining wall. This is the rear of the dwelling, so it's looking at that rear yard from a different perspective. I apologize for this very dark image, but here you can see the existing fence along the retaining wall area. And then this is just another view of that rear yard. There have been several variances approved within this existing subdivision concerning the natural resource protection area. And this variance in particular was a very similar type of variance regarding a fence. And then if you can see, this is the property outlined here. The 2 neighbors adjacent to the residence, both are in support of the proposed fence improvement and associated landscaping. The department did receive 1 written comment via its online form from this neighbor here who was opposed to any improvement in the natural resource protection area. And with that, I will hand it over to the applicant to give a more in-depth synopsis of her project and answer your questions. But if you do have questions of the department, Senior Planner Newberry, Director Vunich, and I are here to answer them. Thank you.
Does anybody have a question for the department before we proceed? Okay. This time then, the petitioner, if you'd like to come forward and remember to state your name, your address, and your relationship to the property, and then you're going to be sworn in by the court reporter.
Okay.
Okay?
Debbie Brown, residing at 16315 One Crest Falls Way, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005. I'm a co-owner of the property. It's my husband and I's property. So thank you for your time tonight.
Just remember, we're going to get you sworn in,
Oh, yes.
and then
Okay.
we can take off. So Courtney, if you'd be ready, I think she is. So go ahead.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You can go
Go
ahead
ahead.
now.
Thank you for your time tonight. I think the pictures and what the city has already described answers it for the most part. Our motivation in wanting to fence this area is primarily for the containment of our 2 dogs. Right now, in order to be outside at any time with us, they're kept on a leash. So as I go through, you'll understand why we're requesting this now. But the hardships really come into play in a couple different manners. One is that where this natural resource protection line has been drawn, compared to the neighbors, cuts our yard depth to about 35 feet off the house. So to fence that area, and if we're to stay within that, makes it a very unusually small usable space. So one, it becomes almost impractical to fence just such a very tiny area like that, particularly because the subdivision bylaws will not allow us to bring the fence up along the side of the house to increase the area or into the front of the house. So the only way we can get any kind of decent area would be to encroach a little bit onto that natural resource protection area. I do want to point out, we're not trying to fence our entire lot. There's still an area back behind this fence that will not be fenced. We're just trying to go in and fence that area that they were showing on their slides, kind of that flat grassy area. We're not really trying to go deep into the woods. We will be taking no trees out. We'll take no vegetation out. And the reason why we're kind of staying in that area is because it was already previously cleared by the builder. It's kind of been an open area there. So it allows us to put the fence in there without really removing anything or really causing any disturbance to that area. So we feel like the style of fence, the way that area is open and almost cleared right now, that we can easily go in, put a fence in with no disturbance to the area. And then by adding the landscaping, we can help with some of the water runoff that has continued to be an issue down the sloped area and into the neighbor's yard behind us. In fact, Joe came out several years ago and they worked at the back of that property to help with some of the drainage. And I don't think it quite accomplished what they were hoping, because that still sits as a very soggy, wet area down there. So the hope is that in putting this fence, it would benefit us in giving us a little bit more area for containment of our dogs when we're out with them. Would also benefit in helping the water runoff in that location for the neighbor, as well as just that woodland area, without really altering the habitat for the woodland, small woodland creatures, as well as some of the larger deer animals they could still easily get around. The second hardship or reasoning for not wanting to fence at this natural resource protection line is because in doing so, it then has us tying into the neighbor's fence almost halfway back from where their fence ends. So to have a fence that goes all the way back because the natural resource protection line in their area goes considerably further back. So to have our fence join halfway through theirs and theirs continue to go on back just presents a very ugly aesthetic. And in, the reason for the bylaws and the dictation in the neighborhood for the fencing is to keep a nice uniform look that adds value to properties and doesn't distract from the value. So we kind of feel like if we are made to fence, or if the only option to fence is at that protection line, it calls a lot of attention to the small depth of the yard. And it just we see that it would be a distraction or a detriment to the resale of our property in having to fence at that area. The third reason that we're really looking at a hard fence versus an in-ground fence is we have an in-ground fence in the yard. We're trying to be good neighbors and good citizens of Wildwood. We had adopted a dog from the Humane Society a few years ago. He was trained on the fence by us. We had professionals come out and train. He was at times very good in the fence, but was known to cross through that. And on one occasion crossed through and bit one of the neighborhood children. It was a very, very sad story. And at the advice of our vet, he was put down. But that's simply something that we don't want to have happen again for our benefit, for our dog's benefit. And for, obviously, we don't anticipate that with our new dog. But that's why, if you look at this and say, well, then you don't need to put a fence in, go with an in-ground fence. We've tried that method and we just have not had any success. And in fact, have soured on that type of containment. So we're just asking not to give us any extra land that we don't deserve. This is all within our property. We're not even going all the way back to the edge of the property. We just want to take a small area of that natural resource protection, put a fence in there that would still allow animals to come back and forth. We're not going to remove any vegetation and in fact, add vegetation to help with water runoff and retainment. So we're hoping that you would be willing to make this exception and grant us this encroachment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, she had a slide of it.
Sorry. The department would recommend that it be a condition of approval this evening should the board move in that direction.
I just forgot to do. Just remember to press the microphone button. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. We consulted with Schmidl's Nursery that I guess also does a lot of work or has done previous work with Wildwood in asking them to suggest some of the types of vegetation and plantings back there that would be most beneficial in one, surviving in that area, and two, that would be beneficial in the water runoff. They indicated some plants are better at that than others. So the ones they've suggested, they feel like would work really well in that area. I'd also like to say we talked to both neighbors on either side. Neither of them have an issue, feel like it too would not be a significant disturbance to the area. So we're hoping you will agree.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for the petitioner? No? All right, at this time, I'd like to open the floor to any speakers or anyone in the audience who would like to weigh in on this request. Are there any? I don't see any in the room. Travis?
Mr. Chair, we do have a few on via Zoom. If they would like to speak, they can use the raise hand feature. And if you don't mind, we'll just give them a few seconds.
No raise hand feature? Okay. All righty. I think that concludes the petitioner's component of this. At this point, I'd like to offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report, if anybody would like that. No, nobody on the board? No, okay. So then we'll just go right on over that. And at this point, if the department would like to make any final comments, please do so at this time.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, generally the Department of Planning sees this overall plan as a bit of a win-win for both the petitioner and for the public benefit of addressing some of those erosion and stormwater runoff issues through these plantings. Clearly, they've taken a very thoughtful approach to their landscape plan. We would recommend that the board condition an approval on subsequent approval of the landscape plan through the zoning authorization process. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final questions or comments by any members of the board? Mr. Van Ness.
I'd just like to say for the people in the audience that it's not that we're not interested in what the planning department has to say. We've had a written version of it for days, so we already know what he could read to us. So that's why we didn't ask for him to get up and read.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and close the proceedings before we take a vote. So at this point, I would like to hear either a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. Mr. Van Ness.
I make a motion, we approve with the conditions of the landscape plan be adopted by our planning department.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Morris, you second? Okay, at this time, we're going to go ahead and ask for a vote. Mr. Lux, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Van Ness, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Morris?
Approve.
Mr. Sides, how do you vote?
Approve.
And I as well approve the petition. Congratulations, your variance request has been approved, conditioned on submitting the landscape plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck. Mhm. All right, at this point, if we could read the second request into the record, we could continue.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the second request and final request tonight is BA 2-23, John and Chrissy Cruson, 4428 Acacia Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63025, care of Alan Rowick. Mainline Group Architecture, 9751 Clayton Road, Ladue, Missouri, 63124. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a two-story bedroom addition to an existing single-family dwelling upon the property located at 4428 Acacia Road, locator number 28B 610765, Acacia Subdivision, Lot B, which would authorize a southeastern side yard setback distance of 16 feet in lieu of the 30-foot standard. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. This particular lot is located in Ward 6. And again, as with the other request, or Ms. Keefe comes forward to present this department slide presentation. Department would like to introduce into the official record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the department regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, Mr. Chair, any other items that are offered as part of tonight's public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Ms. Keefe.
Thank you. All right, our next case this evening concerns a two-story bedroom addition to an existing single-family residence. The subject site is located in southeastern Wildwood, just east of Highway 109. And all of this purple you see here is actually the boundary between the city of Wildwood and the city of Eureka. So this is Eureka. So that's how far southeast we are. The subject site is 1.5 acres in size. And the petitioners also happen to own the property just to the south next door. It is in the non-urban residence district, and it's considered a legally non-conforming lot in that district. There is some significant slope to the property, particularly on the eastern portion of it. So you can see that here. It is heavily wooded. This is the front of the residence, and this is looking east. Here we can see the site plan. And if you take a look, the purple line here actually represents the setbacks. So there is already a substantial portion of this residential dwelling that is in that side yard setback. And the reason for that is this residence was approved for a variance of 17 feet into the side yard setback in 2001 when it was built. And the justification at that time was there was an existing structure on site that became part of this detached garage, which dictated the positioning of the rest of the residence, given some of the constrictions on site caused by the roadway easement and the associated 50-foot setback. There's also a floodplain setback encumbering the lot. And there's a utility easement, and then there's obviously some substantial slope back here. So all in all, it makes it a pretty small area of buildable area. The petitioners this evening are requesting a variance for an addition to their existing residential dwelling on this side within that same area of that earlier variance. So really, we're just intruding on that earlier variance by about 2 inches if you look at the exact numbers on the plan. There is some additional work being proposed. It is outside the scope of this variance, but it does look like they are covering the existing patio area as well as enclosing a portion of it here. They submitted some very nice renderings that should give you an idea of what this will look like. This is the existing south view of the residence, and then this is what is proposed. This is the southeast view. Again, this is existing. This is what it will look like. Sorry if I'm moving too fast. This is the northeastern aerial view. Again, existing and proposed. Let's see, this is, I need my glasses on. This is the northeast view. And again, existing and proposed. Here are the existing conditions today. This is the area of the proposed addition looking west. This is looking southwest. South. This is looking in the opposite direction, north, across the rear yard area. That's most being utilized. This is looking east. It's the view from the rear yard. northeast. And again, outside the scope of the variance, but this is the portion, this is the patio area between the existing dwelling and the detached garage that they're looking to also make modifications to. This is looking southwest, and this is Acacia Road, which is a private road. I don't know if I said that. This is looking north. So this is the residence next door. And this is again Acacia Road. Oops, sorry. This fenced-in area is the adjoining lot that is in common ownership. And then this just gives you a better sense of the land use pattern along Acacia Road. And so this is again looking south. I did submit, I should say the petitioner submitted with their application approval from the trustee of the subdivision. That person also happens to own the residence on the other side of the lot, the vacant lot owned by the petitioner. And other than that, the department has received no written comment. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicants. And if you have any questions of the department, we are here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe. Are there any questions of the department before we hear from the petitioner? Okay, at this time, if the petitioner would like to come forward, remember to state your name, your address, your relation to the property, and then you'll be sworn in by the court reporter. Okay?
Yes, my name is Alan Rohrig. I'm a principal with Mainline Group Architecture. Our address is 9751 Clayton Road, Ladue, Missouri 63124.
Okay. Courtney?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you would like to explain the nature of the request and the hardship or practical difficulty, that would be great.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, members of the board, for hearing our petition. The property that we're working on, we're looking to do an overall upgrade across the whole property in terms of the detached garage and the house itself. So the nature of our extension really has more to do with the particular plan on the second floor to make that bedroom that we're adding in the back sufficient size. This bump out of 4 foot in depth and 13 feet in length will accommodate a bedroom that is now 12'5" upstairs versus a bedroom that's going to be in the 8 foot something range, which nobody wants. And that's sort of driving why we want to move part of that residence out. We are also extending the kitchen on the north side that doesn't affect what we're doing here. The length of the house down the side isn't inordinately large. Right now it's 30'7", so it's going to be 34'7". There's not a visual negative that we feel to this extension by virtue of the fact that we're going through the entirety of the exterior of the home and bringing it up with new windows, new trim. So you could kind of see from the renderings that we're, doing a significant improvement to this property. And in terms of the consolidation argument, we sort of felt that the property in and of itself with the variance that had already been gotten, it would have been a bit of a hardship to try and move a property line. It would have been such a bad thing for the adjoining property that we agreed that it really was better to just go for the variance that had already been gone for previously to try and accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with the house. As she mentioned, the work does have trustee support. So we feel that this is kind of a very unique situation in terms of this lot. And so we're not trying to overdo it and blow out 15 feet or 16 feet. We're just making enough, grabbing enough that we can do a proper renovation on the house and not create a room that really shouldn't have been created in the first place. And I think the rest is really in the report
Okay.
that you have.
All right. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for the petitioner this time? No? Okay. At this time, we'd like to open the meeting to any person, either here in person or on Zoom, that would like to speak in favor or opposition of the request. I don't think there's anyone in the room that I can see. Travis, is there anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chair, we do have one in attendance on Zoom and they've not indicated or raised their hand yet. So
Okay, right. I'm going to count to 5 and then we're going to move on here. Okay. All right. Since we haven't heard anything from the audience, then if anyone would like to hear an oral presentation by the department, we can do that. If not, I don't see a request for that. Then I'm going to ask the department if they would like to make any final comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The Department of Planning is supporting this variance request this evening. Given the previous variance and just how little outside of it this addition really falls, the department feels that it does fit within the existing land use pattern, and to request that the petitioners consolidate lots and lose a legally non-conforming lot seems to present an undue hardship to the petitioners in this case. So we aren't necessarily recommending that avenue. Yes, and that's all I have. And we're available for questions if you have them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Keith. Are there any final questions or comments by the board? Okay, at this time, we're going to close the proceeding for a vote. So if someone would like to make a motion to approve, deny, or approve with any conditions, please do that at this time.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve as requested.
Right, we have a motion to approve. The variance request is requested. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Morris, we'll take your second. And we'll go ahead and call for a vote at this time. Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Lux,
Approve.
Mr. Van Nest,
Approve.
and Mr. Sides?
Approve.
Thank you. And I myself also approve. So congratulations, your variance has been approved as written. Okay. I think that wraps up all of the cases we have for tonight. We only had 2. And we're done with those. And so at this point, we're going to adjourn our meeting and we will all see you in a month. Good night. Thank you all.
thank you, Courtney.